Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, missing my co host, Tyson Gentry, today. He unfortunately had a minor procedure that he had to undergo yesterday, and so he's not feeling quite up to doing a podcast today. So we wish him the best. He's doing fine for those out there who's wondering. So just taking the week off in the college football episode this time. We will have him back and healthy and ready to go for next week. But the show doesn't stop, man. I mean, we got a ton to discuss today. Tyson gave me his blessing and want us to keep rocking. So, we got week 3 recap. Wasn't a ton that happened last week. Not a lot of big games, but this week, week 4, this is the big one. A ton of ranked matchups, a ton of big games that are going to have college football playoff implications, conference championship implications, and things like that. So we'll do a preview of that, talking through the big games, what to expect and things like that. And then obviously money making time. I mean, this is the point now where I start to diversify a lot and give out a lot of picks. So I have a ton on the docket that I actually feel really, really strongly about this week that I hope can continue some success off of last week. But let's get into it. Week 3 recap. And like I said, there wasn't too many big games to go through. So I'll just kind of run through these things real quick, starting with the ranked teams that were in action. Penn State, they still scored 30 points on the road against Illinois, won by 17, but it was mainly the defense who carried the load there. The offense looked pretty bad at times. Drew Aller, who's been really good through 2 weeks, struggled in his first road start in the Big Ten play. And so that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Penn State's offensive line still has some question marks and things like that, but the defense continues to live up to the hype under Manny Diaz as they turn the ball over multiple times and really stifled what Illinois wanted to do on offense. Georgia struggled against South Carolina at home. I mean, they only won 24-10. They were actually trailing at halftime 3-14 in this one before scoring 21 unanswered in the second half and winning by 10. Carson Beck, it's kind of similar thing, right? Young quarterback trying to figure things out. And this team, I think Georgia overall, they've lost a ton from the past 2 teams, obviously, to the NFL draft. But one thing's for certain, they're going to have a running back as Edwards, win a $118 on the ground and a touchdown on 20 carries. Florida State similarly just escaped on the road against Boston College. They were up pretty big at one point, and then Boston College really tried to backdoor them. But it was kind of concerning just, the way that Boston College got back into the game. And so is that something moving forward for Florida State where there are issues with that program? Or is it more so, hey, we're up big, we're looking ahead to our week 4 major matchup against Clemson that I will preview here in our week 4 preview? Texas, another team that got off to a slow start. I mean, they were tied 10-10 heading into the fourth quarter before scoring 21 unanswered points. Ohio State, I mean, they finally showed some semblance of an offense, scoring 63 points against Western Kentucky and holding that team to 10. This seems like a real defense right now at Ohio State. It's just the offense that's had some question marks. And so them putting up some points on the board, Kyle McCord throwing 3 touchdown passes, 318 yards, that's a good sign for that program. Washington continues to roll on offense. I mean, they scored 35 points in the first half. Michigan State scored 0. And it was just, hey, let's get into the second half and coast and not risk anything as they dominated. Alabama continues to look anemic on offense. They tried 2 different quarterbacks after they benched Jalen Milroe. They only scored 17 points against South Florida. Like, that's just flat out unacceptable and not good enough under first-year coordinator Tommy Rees. Tennessee gets upset in Florida. I mean, this is a place that's been a house of horrors for them, and it was once again. I mean, Florida completely dominated them in this game. They were up 26-7 at half, did not ever take their foot off the gas. The offense and kind of the struggles we've seen from Florida over the past, that was present in the second half as Tennessee tried to make a run at them. But the Florida defense did a really good job in this one. And they're at 1-0 in the SEC, 2-1 on the year, and they had a big upset under Billy Napier in his second season as head coach. Everything else was kind of under the radar. I mean, you had Missouri, who upset number 15 Kansas at home on an SEC record 61-yard field goal game winner, which was insane. But I think the big one of the weekend was Colorado once again just has one of the most electric games of the weekend, winning 43-35 in double overtime, ending the game on a pick six. I'm sorry, not a pick six, on an interception. It was nuts. right? Like everybody that I was out with, like they were watching on the TV. It was like a birthday party, and people were still glued to the TV watching this thing. So it was quite the spectacle, and something that Colorado just continues to roll into as they're 18th in the country, 19th in the country now heading into this week. Like it's impressive what they've done. I mean, their win expectation was right at 3.5, favored to the under, and they've gone 3-0. They're going to have a test this week. I'll just put it that way, as that is going to do it for a week 3 recap with not a lot going on, like I said, as everybody's getting ready for this big weekend now. So, what's coming up this week? And just I'm going to name these games right now that we have that are ranked matchups. 1, Iowa, Penn State. 2, Colorado, Oregon. 3, UCLA, Utah. 4, Ole Miss, Alabama. 5, Oregon State, Washington State. And 6, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Those are 6 games where ranked teams are playing ranked teams. Like this is a big weekend and the first big one of the season. And so I'm not going to go through all 6 because I think some of them are a little bit misleading in terms of others. And I think there are 5 on the docket. So I'm really missing a couple of the Pac-12 ones that I just overshadowed. And there's one here, Florida State, Clemson. I think that's one of the biggest games that's not a ranked matchup, as Clemson obviously lost the opener to Duke in the beginning of the season. But this is huge. An absolutely huge game for the ACC. Like we think these are the 2 premier teams in that conference. Florida State, they made a statement early beating LSU. Clemson was not able to answer the bell on Monday of the opening weekend of Labor Day, as they fell to Duke and the offense looked bad. So what type of Clemson team are we getting? Is it the one where the offense looks poor? Or is it the Clemson teams of the past where they rise to the occasion, where they rise to these challenges, especially at home? And on the Florida State side, what type of team are we getting here? Is it the physical team that pushed around LSU? Or is it the team that made some mistakes against Boston College? That's what I'm curious to see, because when they played LSU, they were in Orlando. Like it was a neutral. It was more favorable to Florida State with a short drive from Tallahassee into Orlando. Like this is going to be their first true, actual tough environment. Now, Boston College, it was an emotional game last weekend. It was their red bandana game. If you're unaware of what that is, it's a really cool tradition. Go take a look at that. But nothing's like Death Valley here in Clemson in that conference. Like they know it. Everybody else knows it. Like when you go to Clemson for a big game, you're going to have to rise to the occasion. Now, this isn't a night game, so I think that changes things a little bit, but it's still a noon game, and it's going to be packed in that stadium. So Florida State's going to have to show that they are the kings of this conference, because you're going to have to take out Clemson if you want to show that and plant your flag like, no, this is our conference. So that is a massive game that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Another one here, Colorado, Oregon. I mean, you want to talk about people who are hyped up for this. I think everybody in the country is. Like, how real is Colorado? Because they're sitting at 3-0 and they got all the hype behind them. And then you have this Oregon team who came in as preseason darlings in the Pac-12, only behind USC, who's quietly gone about their business so far, dominating and steamrolling every single team that's been in front of them, and yet they don't get the headlines. And that's probably a good thing for them, who's done everything workmanlike. Bo Nix is taking care of the ball. The offensive line is physical. The defense has just pushed around anybody that's been in their way. And I think this is going to be a real big test for Colorado, who, if you remember that Nebraska game a couple weeks ago, Nebraska was in that game in the first half because the offensive line for Colorado could not withstand the defensive line pressure by Nebraska. This is a whole new animal. Oregon's big. They're physical. They have a head coach who was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. So they have legit big-time athletes in that program who are going to be able to come in and push around both the offensive and defensive lines of Colorado. I think this is the biggest challenge, obviously, to date for Deion Sanders. And when you're missing Travis Hunter, who's their best defensive player and their best wide receiver, that limits what you're able to do on both sides of the football. This will be one of my plays in money-making time, one way or the other. Just stay tuned for that. But this will be, if you can't tell already, I think maybe it's a little foreshadow, but this is going to be a statement game. How good is Colorado? If they're able to stay within this game, I mean, maybe the hype is real on them. Ole Miss, Alabama. So Jalen Milroe's back to being the starting quarterback here for the Crimson Tide with good reason, because what was happening last week was this a complete joke where Alabama couldn't move the ball against South Florida? Now, Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban. He really wants to beat him. He really wants to beat him. He is 0-3 since he's left Alabama. Jackson Dart, I think, might be giving them the best opportunity to win. I mean, I think Matt Corral is probably the better quarterback of Jackson Dart in terms of NFL prospect. But I think in what can attack this Alabama defense, a quarterback who can kind of get outside of the pocket, roll outside and find big plays down the field. I mean, we saw that with Texas and Quinn Ewers doing that to Alabama's defense. I think there could be a way that Ole Miss does the same here. And as far as Alabama goes, I mean, if this offense is ever going to look right, they got to do it against this Ole Miss defense. I wonder what types of tricks that Lane Kiffin's going to have up his sleeve for this one, because we know, like in the past, Kiffin has like overthought these things. Like he gets way too hyped up. He gets way too amped about, oh, I got to make the perfect play call, or we got to do things perfect. I mean, he was going for it on like his own 30 on 4th down at one point and just completely skewed the game. But he's been in some of these games before as well. So I'm really curious, like how good is Ole Miss comparatively in the third season under Kiffin, who's recruited at a high level? And how far is the decline of the Alabama Crimson Tide? Because if they lose this game, we're going to be starting setting up a little funeral for Alabama as we know it under Nick Saban in the modern era. Okay, whiteout. Iowa's traveled into Penn State. Now this is the best atmosphere in college football, the Penn State whiteout. Now, I'm an alumnus of Penn State, so I do say that with some bias, but I think if you talk to anybody who covers the sport for a living, like they'll tell you that is the craziest atmosphere. Unfortunately for Penn State fans like myself, CBS wanted to do it for this Iowa game instead of being able to host Michigan when they come to town, which is going to be a much more important game seemingly for the Nittany Lions this season. I say that because Iowa is completely banged up. They lost their top 2 running backs and one of their top tight ends for this matchup. This is already an offense that was struggling to move the ball. There's some rumors that Cade McNamara, the quarterback for Iowa, is banged up as well. And then on the flip side, if they're not going to be able to move the ball on some of the defensives they've faced so far this year, I can't imagine what that's going to look like going against this Penn State defense. Like that is going to be a real challenge in this environment, facing a Penn State defense who's fast and aggressive and can turn you over if you make a mistake. So that's that challenge there. And then for Penn State, this is an Iowa team that's played them well. Like they've really stifled their offense, but it's not the same type of Iowa defense that we've seen in the past. They have lost a ton of production and a ton of players to the NFL the past couple seasons. Normally they've been able to replenish the cabinet. It hasn't been that way so far for Iowa this season. Like this is a extremely leaky defense, a team that's been giving up explosive plays through the air and on the ground. And I expect Penn State to bounce back from their poor showing offensively last week at Illinois and play much better at home in front of their home crowd. And they get a big statement win on national TV on CBS. And then this is the big one. This is the biggest game of the weekend. Ohio State travels to Notre Dame. And if you don't know the historic implications of this may be the best chance that Notre Dame has to beat Ohio State in a long time. I mean, the last time that Notre Dame, I'm not kidding you, this is a real statistic. The last time that Notre Dame beat Ohio State was 1936. That's before World War II. Just think about that. 1936 was the last time that Notre Dame, a historic program in college football, has beaten the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, they don't play every year. Notre Dame, they've been independent forever, and Ohio State plays their Big Ten schedule and things like that. But that is crazy to think about, especially with all the success that Notre Dame has had over the years. So just think about how much this game is going to mean for those people in South Bend. Like this is a huge, huge game. Now, in terms of the breakdown itself, Notre Dame really hasn't played anybody of note. They played Navy, Central Michigan last week, NC State. These aren't games that are going to challenge you like this Ohio State team will. This defense that Ohio State has is a top 10 in scoring defense, not basically allowing anybody to score on them. Like they look really good, but they've also never faced an offense like this to date this season. So I think both of these teams are going to see things that they haven't seen before. And I wonder which one's going to break first. Is it the Ohio State defense that's seen cupcakes and hasn't seen really good quarterback play? Or is it a Notre Dame offense that has faced soft defenses and their young wide receivers and inexperienced wide receivers haven't been challenged to a degree that they will in this matchup? So that's what I'm going to keep an eye on here. Now, Sam Hartman, I think, is the equalizer for Notre Dame. Like, he's a really good quarterback that has tons of experience, and he's not going to get rattled in this one. At least I don't think he will. Now, he could, because Ohio State, if they are able to push around Notre Dame's offensive line, which I would be shocked if that's the case, if they just completely dominate them, then it could be a long afternoon for Notre Dame's offense. But what Notre Dame can counter with is just being able to set a clean pocket at times for Hartman to use his mobility, get out of the pocket if he needs to, and then find some receivers down the field if anything breaks down. Now, Ohio State on the flip side, this is an offense that struggled so far. It really has. Like, the wide receiver unit that we touted coming in and said, oh my gosh, like, they have potentially 3 first-round wide receivers, which is crazy to think about. It really hasn't gotten going. And it's a running game with like 3 really good college running backs. And they've started to pick it up a little bit, but it hasn't quite been the same amount of dominance that we've seen from Ohio State backs, at least to start the season so far. So what did they do against a defense like Notre Dame, against a defensive-minded coach like Marcus Freeman, who has dialed up some good defenses in the past? Like, this is a huge game. I can't wait for this one. And it's going to be happening simultaneously with a ton of other games at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So, I mean, you're going to have multiple screens going. I mean, again, this is a huge, huge week 4 that I can't wait for. I absolutely cannot wait for this weekend, guys. But with that said, we got to get in the money-making time. Have to get in the money-making time. I'm pumped for this week. I mean, not only are there good games, I think there's a ton of really good betting spots as well. I really do. We've seen some teams. We've seen some data on these guys. We're starting to see who's good, who's not. There's some injuries that affect things as well. And with the NFL back, you know, there's a lot more soft lines, my estimate, in terms of what I've seen in the market that I think we can attack. So first, we got to get into the recap screen here. This is week 3. I went 4-2. That is good enough for a 1.64 unit week. Now, not bad here on the podcast. I am a little pissed off at the Minnesota UNC over not getting there. I mean, we had 31 points in the first half, and then the wheels fell off in the second. But everything else I liked except for the play of the week in Alabama, which was a complete dud. Now, Tyson, he went 2-2. That's a mistake there. If you're watching on YouTube, 2-2. Only lost a little bit on the juice, minus 0.09 units. As a show, we were up 1.55 units for our second winning week of the season. As a total for the year, because I've been so bad, we're down at 4.27 units. Tyson's up 1.43 on the season. I'm still down to 5.69 units as of now to date. So looking to get things back on track. I think we're getting there. I mean, it was a good sign. Just week 1 is what killed. Week 2 is what killed me, honestly. Just a lot of bad beats going my way. I was glad to see things turn for the better in week 3. So Tyson's not here. He sent me 2. Let's see how he plays. He has 4 plays this week. Not as many as me. He's a little bit more conservative than me on this, but he likes Florida State minus 2.5 in the early window against Clemson. Now, he's a big Florida State guy this year. He thinks that they're going to be the ACC champions, so he's riding with them in this one. He likes Oregon State minus 2.5 as well against Washington State on the road. Texas, he's laying 14.5 on the road at Baylor. And then he's riding Penn State at home minus 14.5 in the wideout. So 4 plays for Tyson on the podcast. For me, I have 10 plays, guys. I love this week. At least I believe it might be 10 or 11. I mean, I'd really try to cut it down because there was 14 or 15 that I liked. And I was like, you know what? That's too many to be given out in the podcast. So I'm gonna chop this down a little bit. So let's start here. I'm taking NC State minus 9.5 on the road Friday at 7:30. They're facing Virginia, who is just awful. I mean, I don't know if anybody watched that game against Maryland. They looked formidable in the first half, and then Maryland just flipped the switch in the second half. Too many mistakes by the young freshman for Virginia, the young freshman quarterback, ultimately getting their doors blown off. Back in ACC play, NC State's got a really good defense. Maryland really doesn't. So I think NC State's going to be able to dominate the line of scrimmage, and I think they're going to be able to cover this one. Give me minus 9.5 here for the Wolfpack. Second play, I'm going mano-a-mano against Tyson. And he's gotten the better of me on a few. I've gotten the better of him on a few. We know what Clemson does at home in big moments. Like there's always like some black magic that takes place. Like something crazy happens and something funky happens. And I think Clemson's going to get up and they're going to be ready for this one. And I think they're going to win this game outright. I really do. So I'm going to take the 2.5 with them. If you like them to win like I do, I mean, if you want to sprinkle money line, go for it. But I'm in the business of taking a couple points, especially if it gets wonky and it goes to overtime. I'll take 2 in the hook here for my second play. Auburn plus 7.5 against A&M. Here's the thing. I think this has a chance to be a really low scoring game. Like Auburn hasn't quite shown the explosiveness on offense so far that you would expect under Hugh Freeze, where A&M has in spurts, but I don't know if they're going to be able to quite do that in this SEC matchup. So I'm going to take, and what I think could be a low scoring game, I'm going to take the points, anything over a touchdown here. I mean, the total's 51.5, so it could get pretty crazy. But Texas A&M's defense at least is solid, but can give up points like we saw against Miami. And so if Auburn was ever ready to explode on offense, this could be the game, and I will take the head start of 7 and the hook here with Auburn. Now, I alluded to it before. I'm taking Oregon minus 21 here. I just don't know how this Colorado defense is going to be able to stop what Oregon's going to do on offense. Like this could be a turnstile. Oregon's just heading into the end zone pretty much every time they touch the ball. And then on defense, they could make life really difficult for Shedeur Sanders and the Colorado offense. So I'm not a hater at all on Colorado. I'm actually rooting for them. I'm rooting for Coach Prime. I believe in what's happening there in the program. But I don't think this is the game. This is just such a bad matchup for them on paper. I'm taking Oregon minus 21. I think this is a welcome to the Pac-12 moment. Oregon wins in a landslide. Now, here you go. South Alabama minus 15.5. I think a lot of these lower level games is where you can attack these big marquee matchup weekends. And so I'm going to lay South Alabama minus 15.5 at home. They just came off an absolute drubbing of Oklahoma State on the road. Like they pounded them. It wasn't even close. They only gave up 7 points to Oklahoma State and scored over 30. This is also a Central Michigan team they're playing that is extremely leaky on defense, has given up a ton of points, and South Alabama has been lethal through the air. Like they are a air raid offense that puts up a ton of points. I expect them to do the same here. I do not think there's going to be a let-off from what just happened to Oklahoma State. I actually think that's going to propel them forward, especially coming back home. Like this could be a time where they're like, okay, yeah, we have a chance to win our conference. Let's make a statement here. Let's blow out Central Michigan, and let's get up early and often. Southern Miss, I'm taking them on the road minus 6.5 against Arkansas State. Mainly, this is a power ratings play from a lot of people I trust. Like their power ratings have this way over a touchdown, and I'm in the business of trusting some of those, especially when you have Frank Gore Jr. on the other side of the football. And so maybe this doesn't get home. This has potential to close over a touchdown as well. And Arkansas State is just horrendous. And so if I'm laying under a touchdown here with a way better team, with the best player that's going to be on the field than Frank Gore Jr., that's going to be the play for me. I'm also riding with Tyson here, taking Oregon State minus 2.5 on the road at Washington State. This is a classic matchup and a clash of styles where Oregon State's the more physical team. Like they want to bully you. They just want to line up, push you around, run you over, and just run this ball right down your throat. Where Washington State, they have spread principles. They want to spread the field apart. They want their athletes to be in space. So what type of style wins out? Because Washington State pulled off a huge upset over Wisconsin at home, and they at least used to run a style where they wanted to line up and just run it down your throat. With the new style there, with Luke Fickell and the new offensive coordinator, that changed a little bit. Whereas Oregon State, I think, will just line up, hand the ball off as many times as they can and get chunk plays here. So I think Oregon State's the better team. Washington State's had a really good start to the season, but there's a reason why people were talking about Oregon State as a dark horse in this conference. It's because of their physicality. It's because of their size. And I think they're going to be able to use that to roll to a victory here, especially we're getting that under a field goal here on FanDuel at minus 122 at the juice. Arizona minus 12.5, another road favorite here, which does scare me. But guys, Stanford just lost to Sacramento State, an FCS school, at home. Here's what makes it worse. Their coach, Stanford's coach, Troy Taylor, left Sacramento State. Like, he knew all the players there. He knew what they were going to run. He knew the scheme, and yet they still lost. This is an Arizona team that's actually really talented. They went toe-to-toe with Mississippi State. Not very good in the SEC, but still an SEC caliber team in an SEC environment, and probably should have won that game. I think they're going to be ready for this. I think they want to make a statement that, hey, we're not the doormats of this conference like we've been the past few years. And this is an extremely talented quarterback there in Jaden DeLora, who I think is going to be able to put up points and move the ball at will against this Stanford defense that is extremely poor so far to start the season. I'm taking Ole Miss Alabama over 55.5. That's actually minus 105. So juices to the under. I think we're getting some value here, guys. I really do. One, mainly because people think Alabama's offense sucks, which it might, especially after what they just saw them do against South Florida. But at home, against an Ole Miss defensive coordinator that is not very good, the dynamic ability of Jalen Milroe, if they're just going to like say, you know what, fuck it, we have to run spread, we have to do like 17 quarterback runs to get our athlete in space, and then if we can hit a couple bombs down the field, so be it. I think that's going to help them. And on the flip side, this is an Alabama defense. I don't know how good they are. And it's an Ole Miss offense that can take advantage if you're not good on defense. Like, they're high flying. They want to score points because they can score points. And Lane Kiffin wants to make a statement. If they're up big on Bama, they're not shutting it down. They're just not. They're going to run it in. And we know Kiffin, he doesn't care what you think of him. So I think we're getting value here over 55.5 with the juice actually to the under. So minus 105 here on FanDuel. I really, really like this over. Second to last one here, James Madison minus 6.5. Guys, James Madison is a really good football team, and I can't believe we're getting them under a touchdown at Utah State, who just got embarrassed by Air Force. An Air Force team who is not that prolific through the air, but ran all over him and hit some big plays on him through the air as well. James Madison is physical. James Madison can do similar things to what Air Force did to Utah State. And Utah State wants to spread it out. I don't know how good their quarterback is. Now, the bump at home might help them, and this is a cross-country trip for James Madison heading to altitude. So how much that plays into factor, maybe that has something to do with being under a touchdown. But I'm going to take that every single time where I think I'm getting the extremely much better team under a touchdown here against a team that just flat out didn't look very good. And I could get suckered into this, but the power ratings I trust once again, they have James Madison as a heavy favorite in this one. So I'll be willing to lay under a touchdown here. And then finally, guys, my play of the week, Penn State minus 14.5 here at the whiteout. I just don't know how Iowa's going to move the ball. I really don't. I think that's going to create a lot of short yardage situations or short field situations for Penn State when Iowa's forced to punt. If Penn State isn't able to turn them over, I think they're going to at least force them to do a few 3-and-outs. And I expect the offense to be much better in this one. I really do. The offensive line needs to step up, which I think they will. Drew Aller, the quarterback, I think he's going to have a much better week this week. Being calm, being poised, being back at home, understanding the mistakes that he made last weekend and applying it to this game. So 14.5 here, I hate laying the hook, but in college football, I don't think it's as important as in the NFL. So give me play of the week, Penn State minus 14.5 for my last play. So let me see how many that is, because it is a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it was 11 here, guys. Like I said, there's a ton I like. I like every single one of these plays. I'm playing every single one of these games. Now, pros will tell you not to play this many. I'm not a pro bettor. I just try to play any game that I like, any game that I think there's an advantage that I know, and any game I think that we can win. And so play all of them if you want, fade all of them if you want. It doesn't matter to me. But there's a ton more games that I'm circling as well. And so anything that I haven't released here on the podcast is going to be in our Chalkboard app. Now that is under ISWIS Presents the Roundtable Bets. The link is in this description. So if you're like, what the hell is that? It's a free betting group, like just a free service that you can join. And it's not just like, oh, somebody's throwing picks out there. No, you can drop your plays in too. So if let's say you love Michigan this week against Rutgers, you're like, I'm telling you, I love Michigan minus 24.5. You can share that with the group. And we'll tell you. I mean, we'll have some fun in there. Like if there's some bad beats that are going on, like we've had some times that we're pissed. We've had some awesome live bet hits that we're all sweating out. It's been fun. So make sure to join the chalkboard. If you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description. And it's also in the description of the podcast as well. So if you're listening on Apple, if you're listening on Spotify, the direct link to that is in the description. In the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. We really, really appreciate your support. Anytime you can share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, whatever the case may be, that's great. It helps us get our name out there and bring it to a bigger audience. And if you like the show as well, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you rate us 5 stars on Apple, on Spotify, or however you listen, that helps us become more discoverable in the algorithm. Helps us pop up on YouTube, help other people find us. And same, it helps us climb the charts on the podcast forum as well. So that goes a long way for us, and we really do appreciate it. And go ahead and smash that subscribe button as well so you don't miss anything. Like we've had a ton of content. Like if this is your first time watching, like we've been doing a bunch of NFL stuff, a bunch of college stuff throughout this entire season, and we're just getting started. Like we're just getting to the meat of things. Like conference play starting. This is our first big week. We're going to have a ton more weekends like this in college football. NFL, we're already on week 3. We got 14 more of these babies to go. So we got a lot of content coming for you throughout the fall. So make sure you don't miss anything, and make sure you can stay connected with us on our social media pages as well. X, Instagram, TikTok, it's all the same. The handle is at ISWIS_pod. So make sure to send us a friend request over there as well. That's going to do it for me here on I Said What I Said. Tyson will be back next week for college football. We're wishing him all the best as he recovers from his minor procedure here. But I can't wait to watch these games, guys. I really can't. And so get in that chalkboard. Let's sweat out some of these bets together. Tweet at us or whatever the case is on social media as we're going through it. Let's start building a little community here. Enjoy this Saturday. Enjoy these games. I will talk to you all next week. Till then, guys. Peace.